Hello, welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Draft Room. Day 3 of the NFL Draft here in Kansas City, and we're scrambling a little bit. We were kind of just chilling. Like we're day 3, not totally ready for the Chiefs to make a move. Their fourth round pick was at the tail end of the fourth round, so that we had some time to kill here for a little bit, but the Chiefs jump back up into the fourth round to grab somebody who they like. The pick is in right now. They trade with the Minnesota Vikings and also give up a 2024 fifth round pick to jump up 15 spots in the fourth round. So that's a pretty significant jump. That's the biggest jump we've seen them make so far in this NFL draft. Who are the guys, Caleb and Ron, that you think the Chiefs are going after right now?
So I've been saying that the defensive tackle position makes the most sense for them to be attacking. It's kind of that last true need that they have. I do think they need a running back as well, and it could be a running back. There's some intriguing ones on the board, but I do think they need to address the trenches. They need bodies there, right? A lot of the bodies they have there outside of Chris Jones are just kind of meh, and unfortunately, especially at the nose tackle position. So I don't know, Caleb, any other positions we should be looking at?
I think the two most likely options are going to be looking for that one technique on the defensive line, but I would not be surprised if they double up at wide receiver. Also, Tyler Scott is still on the board. We've talked a lot about, trying to add maybe a big deep threat. So we'll take a look at what we got going with that.
Tyler Scott, honestly, the receivers on the board still, a guy like Tyler Scott, Parker Washington, even A.T. Perry, he's a deep threat as that big X receiver. Trey Palmer, the Nebraska receiver. The Chiefs have some speed they could go with on the field here at receiver as well. So that is a good point.
Yeah, that would be really interesting after taking Rashee Rice yesterday and on day 2 of the NFL draft. And if they take another wide receiver, it's going to roll into like mini camp and OTAs and stuff with like 12 wide receivers on the roster. But I don't hate it. Like, we got a lot of questions about that group, but I do think that, like you guys were saying, defensive tackle, which is still a position of need, which we've seen them address all positions of need so far in this draft. Defensive tackle seems like it would be heavily in play as we eagerly await Eric Stonestreet to announce the Chiefs' fourth round selection. So let's see. We're waiting.
I've been kind of saying Keandre Coburn is my favorite nose tackle, true nose tackle left on the board. He's a Texas defensive tackle, very stout, and can do it. But we're about to hear here, so let's see what we got. I don't
Come on, Eric Stonestreet. Yeah, Don't let us down. Don't let us down, Stonestreet. We're ready.
They take a corner, though. They take Chamari Connor, the Virginia Tech cornerback.
So
they go with must be kind of a BPA here because not necessarily a position of need, but you can never have enough corners, as they like to say.
That's actually interesting because I think me and Caleb were talking about it before we got here this morning. It's like, the success that the Chiefs have had with these mid-round picks in the past couple of years, it was like, yeah, these are the needs, and there's some other guys on the board that we really like. But would you be shocked if they decided to just do something like take a cornerback? Because like we know that their secondary is pretty much set, especially in that cornerback room. But yeah, like you mentioned, Ron, like can never have enough good cornerbacks in the NFL. And that seems to be a position that they are really good at evaluating and identifying in the draft. So like, I don't have a problem with it. I would have liked to see them go defensive tackle there, but if that is the best player they had on the board, they traded up for him. He's a guy that they obviously identified and wanted to make sure that they got.
Yeah, no. I mean, when you kind of look at his profile, I mean, he's definitely got it kind of fits just in general. I mean, when you're looking at the basics of who he is as a player, just kind of that bigger corner, right? That kind of has size and, a willing tackler, able to come up, played, with Virginia Tech, that defense, but definitely someone that fits the Spags mold. We kind of talk about playing on the perimeter. You got to be able to come up, tackle. It's what Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams were able to do in their rookie years. I got to imagine he's kind of in that same mold. Not someone that I particularly looked at, specifically, to be honest with you, but definitely someone I knew that would be kind of that outside cornerback, not going to be a slot type or anything. He's going to be playing on the perimeter as a corner. So the Chiefs are going to keep attacking that position. And again, it's not a bad position to have a lot of depth at.
Yeah, and Brett Veach and his love affair with day 3 cornerbacks continues. They move up to get Connor, so obviously they like him. But, you take a look at the height, 6 feet tall, weighs 202 pounds, got 31-inch arms. So he fits kind of those molds that he looks for. he's going to fit, that athletic matrix that Spags typically likes in his cornerbacks. And, even at the bare minimum, because you got to also think in, terms of this, we think they have a good cornerback group right now. They might be drafting guys who they think can possibly contribute on special teams also. That's a big thing with day 3,
right?
Is they need guys to fill out those special teams unit. They need guys that are going to be able to come in and compete. I think what you have in in Connor is a guy that could possibly be a four-phase special team guy, meaning he's going to play on the kick, or he's going to play on the kickoff team, the kick return team, the punt team, and the punt return team. So there's definitely some value there. He might have, this honestly feels a little bit early for him, of where you've seen a lot of projections for him. So again, they trade up to get a guy that they like. And, just kind of with the whole, defensive back thing, though, it's something Veach clearly values. It's his personal, brand, is his style of management, is he's going to take his cracks on the guys he thinks. And, his track record of day 3 corners has been pretty darn impressive so far. So, like we mentioned earlier, it wasn't necessarily a gaping need, but it's a guy who they really like, who they think can be a contributor at some point.
It's interesting to see the development of Brett Veach in cornerbacks, because a few years ago it was, he doesn't draft quarterbacks. They don't need them. They'll just find, available veterans and get a lot out of them and on the cheap. And now the past few years, totally rebuilt the secondary, and you feel pretty confident when they take corners out. Like, I think you kind of have to, because of the run that they are on. Like Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, L'Jarius Sneed a few years ago. Like, that's a fantastic group of playmakers in your secondary, and we saw how impactful those 3 rookies were last season. So I would have liked to have seen a defensive tackle here, because like you guys were saying, like, I feel like there is some value on the board there. But at this point, I'm willing to just assume that when the Chiefs take a cornerback, it's because they know that guy can find a way onto the field and find a way to have an impact.
Right. And I think one of the important parts about talking about, getting these day 3 cornerbacks, and obviously Veach has to do a good job of finding the right guys that can do it. But Spags' defense does allow for corners to kind of come in and not maybe have to think as much as maybe other defenses ask of their cornerbacks, right? Spags is pretty simple. Hey, you're gonna press. You're gonna have to be physical. You're gonna have to come up and play the run. We're gonna ask you to man cover at times, but it's not like he's a very complicated. A lot of the other positions on his defense ask a lot of complications, a lot of the complexities. How he gets very creative with his linebackers blitzing, his safeties. The cornerback position kind of stays tight, or kind of stays steady on that outside. And so I do think it's a simple position, a simple role to an extent for day 3 corners to come in. So a lot of times you do just kind of find the guys that are physically impressive, that you can tell have the length to disrupt receivers off the ball, and just not be able to, give up, easy picks, right, or easy catches right away. I think that's what you got with Jalen Watson last year. Obviously, we've seen that. He made some great plays on the outside. And again, I think this is in a similar range. So I don't think Shamar Connor is as long as the guys we got last year. I don't think he's in that same thing, but he's as physical, I would say. And so I think, Joshua Williams was a 4th-round pick last year. You can kind of compare the two. Connor played at a higher level. I mean, it is kind of something where, Joshua Williams now all of a sudden has to step up if he wants to, still have a role on this team, because the cornerback room is loaded.
And and this is from Matt Derrick at Chiefs Digest. Like, he played corner and safety. So is this another, like, one of these hybrid Spags players where if he can find a way to make an impact as a rookie and get on the field, like, they're just going to utilize him in multiple different ways?
I was also just about to say something about that, because I looked at his tackles for just, for a corner. His tackle volume looked a little high. He's got a couple of games where he's close to, 10 total tackles. So with that kind of ability to come down and play, you think you just have a versatile guy. And really on a day 3 like that, having the ability to do both of those things does have value, especially since we kind of feel like the safety units and the cornerback units are kind of rounded out. It kind of helps to have another guy in there that can do a little bit of both, just as a depth building piece.
It is interesting too, the kind of the shift that we've seen, where, like, a couple years ago, that secondary is built around Tyrann Mathieu. In his final year in Kansas City, he was not interested in tackling and like trying to lay hits on people, where they've got Brian Cook, who we know is a rocket sometimes, and he's a thumper and he likes to lay some hits. And now this latest addition, like they've got a lot of cornerbacks that can tackle, because we know how solid L'Jarius Sneed is in that regard too. So like just the defensive backfield in general, like they got a lot of guys who are not scared to lay hits on people.
Yeah, no, and this is where, not watching guys, we got to be careful of their instant reactions, because I think the more you look into him as we're reacting to it live, PFF, if you look at his data, he barely played outside cornerback at all. Actually, at Virginia Tech, he was primarily a slot defender, played in the box quite a bit, did not play over the top. So you're looking at a guy that is going to be playing maybe in that safety role, in that same kind of Mike Edwards role, right? They signed him to kind of be in that kind of slot, kind of box role. They have a guy like Brian Cook that does some of those same things, not necessarily in the slot, right? Brian Cook can play more of the top. He's more of a traditional safety. But this is a guy that's going to be, if he's going to be playing on defense, it's slot cornerback. But I think you hit it on the nail on the head, Caleb. I mean, this guy's going to be a special teams guy right away, and I think that's maybe where the value is for an immediate contributor, right? Is playing on special teams right away.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I do remember, you remember back when they first drafted L'Jarius Sneed, everyone was kind of like confused about the pick because he just didn't have the greatest safety film in the world. And then they turned him into, I'm not saying he's going to turn into L'Jarius Sneed or anything, but it is kind of an interesting just to look at, that kind of value for what they did want to pick up on day 3. So, I mean, if anything, it's going to add another body into that room. It's going to up the competition. And last year I did think it was funny though. They drafted all those guys, and then they went out and signed Lonnie Johnson, and eventually he did get cut, because they were being aggressive and, trying to get their rookies on the field. I wonder if, like Ron brought up, the Mike Edwards could be in a similar situation where they think they have a veteran who they know they can roll with, but they'd really like for the younger guy to probably take the role at some point just so they could have him, on the roster, because he's a 4th round pick now. I mean, they are going to want him to play at some point. It's just we bring up the special team stuff because that's where he's going to be able to contribute at nearly immediately. But it's crazy though. You mentioned how we as analysts are trying to view these guys. We're going off of our information, and then the Chiefs are like, yeah, well, we think this guy that played a lot of safety is going to end up being a corner for us at the next level. So that's just how this kind of thing goes.
And I think it just goes back to, I think over the last couple of seasons, you can really say that Brett Veach and his staff are they're identifying athleticism and they're identifying versatility. Like guys that they can move around on the defensive line, guys that they can move around in the secondary, and especially on that defensive side of the ball. Like they've definitely identified it at this point, like a type of defender that they want, whether it's on the defensive line or in the secondary or in that linebacker core. Like they definitely identified him as a guy that they think could wind up being somebody that they can utilize in different ways. So again, they take Virginia Tech defensive back Jamari Connor. They trade up with the Minnesota Vikings in the 4th round, pick number 119. The Kansas City Chiefs do not have another pick until the 5th round. Yes.
What pick did we just take him at? What?
122
that was
the pick.
It was 119
Sorry,
for
119
Jamari Connor. They do not pick again until 166 in the 4th round, barring some more movement.
If you recall back to Brett Veach's first draft as general manager, they took Armani Watts in a very similar slot. They took him at pick 124. And, he did some good things. He was a solid backup, but he was mostly just a special teams ace, like one of those 4-phase guys like we mentioned. So, you're starting to see kind of some of the similarities and the patterns in the way that Veach likes to draft, just the versatility to do cornerback and safety, and then obviously putting somewhat of a value on special teams. This might have been a Dave Tobe selection if we're talking, if we're being honest with it.
Well, let me just throw a quick stat out there because I'm doing some PFF research on this guy, and he was blitzed quite a bit too at Virginia Tech, was used off the edge. Not necessarily in 2022, but in his redshirt freshman season, his second year on campus, first year really had a role. He had 6 sacks as a defensive back. So this is a guy that can get after, kind of just be a disruptor, right? You can throw him in the dime defense and say, hey, go make a play against the run, blitz the quarterback, blow up a running back in pass protection. This is the kind of guy you're kind of looking at there, which, hey, it's those are kind of fun players, right? We kind of like to see those players on your defensive backfield.
I'm trying to see if they brought him in on a visit or not.
Yeah. And we know Spags is going to send those DB blitzes. Like we know he's going to do it. He's going to mix up the blitz looks. And so, he may not be a guy that's going to find the field immediately on the defensive side of the ball, but I totally agree with you guys. Like he seems like a for sure locked in special teamer. And you think about like Brian Cook, and Brian Cook had some really great moments on special teams last season, but with the departure of Juan Thornhill, we expect his role to expand in the defense. Like, might not be playing special teams as much. So it seems like he's the type of player who could step right in and kind of fill a role there for Dave Tobe.
Yeah, and let me add to that because Nate Taylor just tweeted this out. Chiefs area scout Anthony McGee on safety, Chamari Connor's versatility. He was asked to do a lot of things at Virginia Tech. He will play any position we need him to in the back end, and he projects him to be a 4-phase special teamer. So there you go. This is the Chiefs area scout saying that. So that's the guy, that's the team kind of telling you that he's going to be a special teams contributor.
So
Dave Tobe's got some pull, man.
Yeah. And, the Chiefs get a guy who's got a chance to be a versatile defensive back for them and will probably step right into a special teams role for Dave Tobe. So Kansas City Chiefs trade up in the 4th round to number 119 to take Virginia Tech defensive back. What's his name?
Chamari Connor.
Chamari Connor. See, that's how you know it's been a long weekend.
Well,
all right, we've been out here grinding, and I'm reacting, and I'm trying to keep up with all the players that they're adding and all the moving pieces. Chamari Connor, I will not forget his name again. I promise.
Well, let me say this too: the first three picks, I honestly went pretty uniform to what I think the Chiefs needed at the positional needs. I really do, and it aligned with what I predicted. This was pretty far off. I especially if he's not a true corner, I really didn't think they needed to address the safety position again until like a UDFA kind of pick. I really feel like that's the truth. And so if this guy really is someone that's, in the similar realm, like I mentioned, as a Mike Edwards, as the Deion Bush, the veteran. I mean, hey, he's a pick now, so he's going to be developing. He's going to be on a rookie deal. He's going to be here for a little bit. So, it's a future pick more than a short-term pick, obviously. But, they still have positional needs. Defensive tackle would have been nice here. Even some of the skill position players. But again, it's a special teams pick. And if this guy ends up making some special teams plays, then it doesn't really matter where he goes in the draft. This team is winning on those kind of margins right now. So they need those guys to make those kind of plays on those margins.
And just looking at the safety room, outside of Justin Reed, there isn't a guy in that room that's ever been a consistent starter. Mike Edwards has played a lot of snaps, but he was, his only season as a full-time starter in Tampa Bay. He had lots of ups and downs. I think we're all projecting high on Brian Cook to continue his late season surge and, win that spot. And then, Deion Bush, he's always been kind of a backup role player guy. So, Connor's going to come in, but it's going to be some interesting competition. And this is really, it's going to bring out the best. This is kind of, honestly, this feels honestly, with that whole looking for the last safety. I mean, we think it's going to be Cook, but just kind of like with the Wanya Morris pick, it's the competition is going to, bring out the best player, and they're going to be able to figure out who is going to be able to take that last spot eventually.
So through 4 rounds, Kansas City Chiefs, 2 defensive players, 2 offensive players, filling out positions of need and continuing to add versatile players that might find a way to make an impact for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think so far we should feel pretty strong about this draft class. Again, the Chiefs don't pick again until late in the 5th round, barring another move up. So we're going to wrap this up and take a quick break right now, but we'll be here with you throughout the entire day 3 of the NFL draft as the Kansas City Chiefs are making moves. So as soon as they are on the clock again or make another move, we will be right here. So make sure you're locked into our Twitter feed, our Facebook feed, our YouTube feed here at Arrowhead Pride. Make sure you're checking out all of our player profiles. We got all the info you need at arrowheadpride.com and right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. So we'll talk to you guys here in a little bit when the Chiefs are back up.